Welcome to the Imperial Truth. I'm your host Eric, and today we're going to talk about Mechanicum Army List. Yeah, because I think I figured something out, guys. Maybe you figured this out already because you're smarter than me, which is entirely possible. But I feel like I had a little bit of a breakthrough with list building, and I wanted to share it with you and see what you think. So let's get in here. So in general, I think that there are two ways to build Mechanicum armies. Obviously, there are myriad ways, but I think there are two main ways that we can build our lists. We can either build sort of a mono faction build, or we can build a soup build. And if you're familiar with sort of the old versions of 40K, soup is where we kind of just throw everything in and make it work. So our mono faction build is going to maximize our detachments. So we're going to have fewer detachments in this, but we're going to have a lot of overlapping cybertheurgy, a lot of redundancy to the list. We are going to have access to really powerful apex detachments, and we're going to be able to take advantage of these detachments. So, for example, the Panoply of Cruelty, which is our Ursarax detachment, is really, really strong, but you should probably be running 3 units of Ursarax, probably 3 units of 9 Ursarax to really take advantage of that detachment. Host of Destruction is our Myrmidon detachment. And again, if you're leaning into this, you probably want to bring lots of Myrmidons to make that work. Iron Phalanx, I will probably, if you guys want, let me know in the comments if this is something you want. I would like to speculate build an Iron Phalanx army that I think would be a good mono build. And if people want to see that, let me know in the comments, and we'll make it happen. And then the Thalax Command Cohort is okay. It's not a great detachment, but it's not terrible either. And having multiple Thalaxy units is not a bad thing. So with our mono faction build, we can very easily, create units of or detachments for our transports. Remember that our transports need to pick a faction when we set them up. So if we create an armored fist detachment and we put in let's say a pair of Triaros, and we make them reductor so that they can carry Thalax. If we want to have a third Triaris with Lacrimata, so we can put in some tech thralls, we need that in a different detachment, right? So very quickly, we're going to end up with a lot of detachments in our soup build with 1 or maybe 2 units in it. So the advantage to having the mono faction build is that we can really just maximize all of our efficiencies all over the place with that. Unfortunately, my collection does not lend itself very well to the mono faction build yet. I would like to have enough Cybernetica stuff to run kind of a Cybernetica mono faction build, but I'm just not there yet. The soup mentality is that we're going to take lots of things from lots of different sections. We're going to have specialized roles. We'll have a little bit more tactical flexibility with things, but more importantly, we are going to really maximize allied detachments. And I think that this is the part of the Mechanicum faction army list building that I have not fully appreciated up until now. And again, if you're watching this and you're like, you idiot, this is where we've been the whole time. That's fine. I may be a little slow on the uptake. So let's talk about this. Let's build this list. We need to revisit this idea of allies. So allied detachments are no more than 50% of the points limit set for the battle. So if we build a 3,000 point list, we can only have 1,500 points in our allies. Keep that in mind. That's going to be semi-important, not really important, but it could be important. The allied detachment must be a different faction than the primary detachment. Okay, so we can't have Blood Angels and then Blood Angel allies, for example. We can't have Imperial Fist with Imperial Fist allies. You have to have a different faction. You could have Blood Angels with Imperial Fist allies, though. That is allowed. The allied detachment contains a command slot, which is a prime slot, which is going to be important in a bit. So we can get a prime slot for that, but the troop slots are not prime slots like they are in the primary or the Crusade primary detachment. And then allied detachments may not share factions with the Crusade primary detachment. Why is that important? Well, because Mechanicum faction traits are factions. This was very clearly established in the most recent FAQ. It's explicitly in there. Archimandrite, Cybernetica, Lacrimata, Myrmidax, Reductor, Malaga, and Macrotech are all distinct factions. Lacrimata is as different from Myrmidax as Iron Warriors are from Sons of Horus. That is the way the rules are written. You can argue all you want in the comments about transports and all this stuff. It is the way that they're written. It's very clearly delineated, and with the new FAQ, not the most recent FAQ, it's even more clear. I'm sorry, it does mean that if you have a Macrotech transport, you cannot ever put Thalax in that Macrotech transport. That sucks. That's not the way I would want it to be, but it is the way it is written. Each different, somebody called me out for this a while ago, and I've been playing it well now, better now, but I want to make it clear. Each different faction gives you access to different high-tech arcana. So if I have a Myrmidon Magos, but all of my other stuff is Cybernetica, that Myrmidon Magos still gets all the advantages of being Myrmidax. That is the way it is written. Each time you select somebody, you pick a faction and they get those advantages, which means that you can kind of mix and match those as well, which is pretty cool. And then just pointing out that this is explicit in the FAQ, where it mentions that you can ally Mechanicum with Mechanicum, because if you have as we're going to see today, a primary detachment that is Cybernetica and has no, let's say, Lacrimata in it, then you can have a Lacrimata allied detachment, so long as that Lacrimata allied detachment doesn't have any Cybernetica in it. So they can't mix, but they are all Mechanicum units. And if you carefully read our rules, there is nothing in the rule that keys off of a Mechanicum at all. So it literally doesn't matter how you make your soup. It's all going to kind of get mixed together at the end and work its way out. So this is pretty cool. At first, this seems really daunting because there's all these keywords and all these rules and all these exceptions, and it seems like you're trying to like break the rules, but it ends up being kind of interesting. So let's get into this a little bit further. So we have these prime advantages that we have access to, and there are 3 that are worth noting. So combat veterans is the big one. Combat veterans is the one that we're going to be taking a lot. It is +1 to leadership, cool, intelligence, and willpower. So +1 to leadership and cool is super important now if you're going to run Automata, because in the most recent FAQ, it's again explicitly called out that if you have a unit of Castellax and you put a Magos with that unit, you are now subjected to taking tactical statuses. And more so, you take the tactical status tests on the Magos. So we want that leadership and we want that cool to be as high as possible. But also, +1 intelligence means that we are more likely to do Battlesmith and Cybertheurgy when we need to. And we did a whole video on this, on the mathematics of war previously. But I just want to point out that going from a 6 to a 7, right? So if I have a Magos and I'm trying to do something like overcharge reactors, which is a difficulty of 2. So my base intelligence is 8. If a tech priest. So if I do it with a tech priest, and that tech priest goes from an 8 to a 6, it's like a 40% chance that they're going to succeed in that. If I go from a 6 to a 7, so if I increase my intelligence by 1 with combat veterans, that's a 40% improvement there in terms of how often that's going to occur. If I go from a 7 to an 8, that's a 24% improvement. So these are huge jumps in terms of the probability that I'm going to end up getting the power off, which is great. We also have Paragon of Battle, which is not huge for us, but we're going to talk about a build that's going to play into this list with this. Paragon of Battle is +1 attacks, +1 weapon skill, and +1 ballistic skill, which is pretty good for us. It's arguably much better if we're dealing with a Space Marine or Adeptus Astartes champion model who gets Paragon of Battle and goes like 75 attacks at weapon skill 10 or whatever. I don't know what it is. And they're always going to kill us. But it is possible to kind of buff up some of our guys and make them better. And then the last one, which doesn't play into this list, but it's worth noting because it's pretty cool, is Prime Specimens, which gives +2 strength and +1 wounds. So there is somewhere out there is a build from Lacrimata and Lacrimata and Myrmidax, where we just end up with a bunch of super buff tech priests and magos out there, which is kind of fun to think about. You could do it if you want to build that list and share it with me. Please do, and I'd love to see it. I don't have the models for it, but it seems like it would be kind of fun to try and like out Space Marines. You're gonna fail, but it would be fun to try. All right. So the last thing I want to do before we get into the list is just make some quick notes, and mainly that this is based off my collection, mainly what I have painted and what I am painting. So this is not an optimal list. We'll talk about some of the optimal changes towards the end. But just, if you're the type of person who really likes super optimal tournament lists, this is not going to be, this may give you ideas, but this is not going to be some super optimized list. There's probably 100 to 200 points that I could screw around with and make more optimal and put other things in that would be better. Also, a lot of this is based on what you see is what you get. That's the way I play when I can. So again, it's not optimal in that mentality. So let's go in here and talk about this. So our Crusade Primary Detachment. Crusade Primary Detachment, if you've seen my list building before, is going to be very similar. I have an Archmagos. That Archmagos is going to be Cybernetica because I want the command maniple Apex Detachment. Why do I want that? Because I'm building into Automata in the Primary Crusade Detachment, and the command maniple is the only one that allows us to run 2 different units of automata together. The Thanatars are heavy support, which is 1 slot at a time. Castellax Destructors are shock assault, and I only have 1 unit of those. I only have 1 unit of Castellax Battle Maniple, and they're a support slot. So I have basically, if I bring my 4 units of Automata, that's 4 detachments guaranteed. But if I use the command maniple, that goes down to 3 detachments, which is more reasonable. But yeah, so there's that. He's going to have a Cortex Controller, a Cyber Familiar, Overcharge Reactors, Paragon Blade, Volkite Serpenta, and a Phase Plasma Fusel. The Phase Plasma Fusel is in italics here because I could probably drop that and save 15 points. That gun isn't going to get fired very much given the range of the unit that this guy's probably going to be with. But to justify some of these decisions, and I won't repeat this every single entry, Cortex Controller is so that we can do reactions with Automata, which is a really important part of the Mechanicum build. If we're running Automata, we need to be able to do reactions because everybody else can do reactions, and we're already at a disadvantage because we don't get the extra reaction point for bringing in Archmagos for whatever reason. Cyber Familiar is for the +2 to intelligence checks. That's should be obvious, but is super important for both Battlesmith and Cybertheurgy. Overcharge Reactor is the Cybertheurgic power. Almost everybody's going to have this in the list because you can do it to a vehicle or an automata, and it's going to give you either +1 to your weapon skill and ballistic skill, +1 to your initiative or strength and toughness, or +1 to your initiative and movement. So all of those are important. The Paragon Blade on the Archmagos is because I used a Paragon Blade previously with an Archmagos, and it is just by far the better weapon. For the extra points, I would always do that, except when the this new Skitarii Marshal model comes out, and then I'm going to kit bash this Skitarii Marshal with this Archmagos kit and give them a Power Fist, because that's going to look awesome. And I really don't care that it's not good. It's gonna look awesome. The Magos here is going to be in the Myrmidon slot. It's going to be Myrmidon faction in the Prime slot. This will unlock 2 auxiliary detachments. So I'm going to have 1 Apex detachment, 2 auxiliary detachment. That's it, my Crusade detachment. This guy is going to get get the Prime slot. They're going to get Cyber Familiar for the same reason before. They're going to get Fury of Ages, which is the Myrmidax version of Overcharge Reactors. I can get +1 to my strength and toughness, or +1 to my weapon skill and ballistic skill with this, which is going to be handy. This guy will have a power axe because that's what it's modeled with, a bolt pistol because that's sort of what it's modeled with, and a phased plasma fusel because, again, that's sort of what it's modeled with. This will also get Paragon of Battle. We'll return to that in a minute because Myrmidax plus Paragon of Battle is a really great combination. Would definitely recommend this. Even if you're not running Myrmidons, it's probably worth running a Myrmidax in a Prime slot with this Myrmidax Magos in a Prime slot with this combo, because that would be really handy. Maybe not with a Power Axe. Maybe a Power Lance is a better choice in this. But again, my guys, Power Axe. We're going to pop in a Cybernetic Tech Priest in the Prime slot for the troops choice. Again, Cortex Controller, Cyber Familiar. Servo Arm is going to give me +1 to my Battlesmith. So I'm just going to do that so I can do a little bit more battlesmithing. I think that gets me to Battlesmith 3 with this guy. And then Overcharge Reactors, Power Axe, Bolt Pistol, Combat Veterans. So Combat Veterans is that +1 to Leadership, Cool, Willpower, and Int. That is going to be very handy for our Tech Priests. And then last but not least is our Tech Priest for Cybernetica. And this guy he's not a Prime slot. He just has a Servo Arm because I had 15 points left over at the end to give him a Servo Arm. This guy is, his name is going to be Copper Top. He is just a battery. And we will sort of talk about where he slots in a minute. So the Archmagos is going to go with my Castellax Destroyers. The Magos is going to go with the Myrmidons, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then the first Tech Priest, the Prime Tech Priest, is probably going to babysit the Thanatar Calyx. The Thanatar Calyx, the one with the Solix Heavy Las, because that will give me access to overcharge reactors for that, as well as repairs, as well as reactions. So that's a really good upgrade, I think, in that case. In this group, we're going to have our Command Maniple Apex Detachment that'll fit in. If you've seen my videos before, we've done this before. I have a 5 model Castellax Battle Maniple. 3 of them have power blades, bolters, and the Mauler cannons. 2 of them have shock chargers, flamers, and the Mauler bolt cannons. They're going to get the logistical benefit. They're going to be accompanied by a Magos that we'll meet later. So they don't need to have the Paragon of Metal here. And I'd rather take the Combat Veterans ability than use my Tech Priest to unlock this. So they're going to unlock my logistical benefit. The idea behind this unit is that they're big, they are stompy, they have a lot of wounds, they have high toughness. They're versatile. If I want, I can give them +1 to weapon skill and ballistic skill, or I can give them +1 to strength and toughness, or I can give them both, because I probably have enough overcharge reactors in the army to do that. The 2 flamers are there to put status effects on things. If the Mauler bolt cannons don't, so these guys can move up. They can shoot you in the shooting phase. They can then shoot you again in the assault phase. They don't have to charge. They take up a lot of space. They're good for blocking charge lanes. They aren't going to die quickly to a lot of things. I just have to get better about knowing when to use which cyberthergic status. I tend to default to +1 weapon skill, ballistic skill, but I think that +1 strength toughness is going to be something that I need to play more into, especially when we're facing like strength 5 guys, where going from a 5 up to a 6 up to wound is really, really big. In this detachment is also the Thanatar Siege Maniple, which is the Cavus configuration, which is the plasma cannon and Mauler bolt cannon and shock chargers. This will be the paragon of metal. Traditionally, I've used the Calyx for this, but I'll explain why in a minute. So this is going to get +4 int, will and leadership, which is huge, +1 weapon skill and initiative, which is fine, and it's going to get the sergeant, and more importantly, this model can score on its own. Why am I doing this? Because the Thanatar Cavus doesn't have anything that it needs to stay still for. It has ordnance range on the big plasma mortar, but it's 36-inch range. Like I don't usually need to stay still to shoot it. So this guy's just going to stomp up the board and try and score objectives. It's got support, so it can only score 1 point a turn, which is a bummer. But it's completely automatous. And I want my Calyx, which we'll talk about in a minute, I want that to be doing reactions, because reacting with that Solix Heavy Las is really good. This guy doesn't care about reactions. He's just there to stomp up the board, take up space, distraction, carnifex, get up in your face. He's going to beat up tactical marines in melee. He's just there to stomp on people. And then my Myrmidon Secutors, which are my logistical benefit, because these guys are usually elites. This unit's going to have 3 phased plasma fusils and 1 twin graviton gun, although currently I'm just painting the phased plasma fusil, so I would have 4 of those. Phased plasma fusils are phenomenal for killing marines. They're just so good at that. These guys have implacable advance, which allows them to shoot the phased plasma fusils in volley fire, which is really good. And then we did a whole video on the Myrmidon Secular Lord in challenges, where he can basically trounce most characters because he shoots before he gets to do anything. So you want to give these guys +1 ballistic skill, +1 weapon skill from your Cyber Theurgy. And then when he does a challenge, he's crit hitting his ranged attacks on 6s, which do extra damage and are breaching. And just, he's just a menace. And he's hard to kill. So definitely put them up there and use them to bully stuff. Please be aware, we've talked about this before, Myrmidon Secutors really don't like Terminators, though. We don't want to be putting these guys into Terminators or anything with a 2-up save. We really want to put these guys into veteran squads and tactical squads and let them bully regular Marines. They're not going to like being against Terminators. Our other detachments here are, we have our heavy support with a Thanatar Calyx. As I mentioned, this guy is going to get probably a Tech Priest and try to stay in a place where they can stay stationary, which is really unfortunate because I want to punch something with that big piston graviton fist, but it's just never going to happen. And wants to be able to react so that it can shoot vehicles that are shooting it. So this guy's just trying to take out vehicles one at a time. Please don't use these guys to shoot your opponent's land raiders. They cannot kill land raiders consistently at all. You're better off killing every other vehicle on the table and just leaving the land raiders alone. We literally can't deal with them, unfortunately. If he melees a land raider, it could get interesting. But generally speaking, they're not gonna shoot land raiders to death. And then we have a shock assault group, which is 2 Castellex destroyers with dark fire cannons. Again, if I had unlimited funds, I would probably pick up 1 more of the Castellex box and build 2 more dark fire cannons and have this be a unit of 4. I think a unit of 4 is going to be disproportionately better than a unit of 2 because suddenly these guys are real threat terminators, which is a thing that we struggle with. They're also really good into strangely good into dreadnoughts. So just be aware of that they are not bad. They just have their specific targets. You don't want to be putting these into vehicles unless you're dealing with some sort of vehicle with a really, really low front armor, or like rhinos from the side or something. They're probably okay into that. But generally, I wouldn't be shooting these guys into vehicles. So that's our main detachment. That's our main grouping. And the Archmagos is going to go with those Castlex destroyers. Then we're going to layer in, this is where it starts to get fun. So we're going to layer in 2 allied detachments, both Mechanicum detachments, because that's the way it works. So our first detachment is going to be a Magos, a Taghmata Magos, and they're going to be in the prime slot. They're going to get the Cyber Familiar Flesh Knit protocols, which is the Taghmata version of overcharge reactors. So we can do on this, we cannot do the initiative one. We can do the initiative one. We can't do the weapon skill one. So we can give them +1 strength and toughness. We can give them +1 to movement and initiative, but we can't do the +1 to weapon skill, ballistic skill, which is fine. This guy's got a power maul because that's what my model has, a Volkite Serpenta because again that's what the model has, and combat veterans. This is a custom character that I made for the last campaign, and has just kind of hung out with my army ever since. So this guy is basically just there to buff the Ursarax that we will see in a moment. In this detachment, we have an armored support detachment with a Krachnos and 2 Krios battle tanks with lightning cannon and Volkite calivers. I would suggest the Volkite calivers because they're not very expensive, and because they're sponson weapons, you're not snap firing with them if you shoot them at something different. You will be snap firing with a lightning cannon, but that's okay. It's a 5-inch AoE. It's going to hit the target probably anyway. This guy can scooch around the board really fast and shoot anything you want. And I've got 2 of them. So they're just kind of out there to take out some tactical Marines or whatnot as quickly as possible. The Krachnos assault tank is great. It's got a panic gun on it, and then the not lightning cannons, they're not lightning guns, the lightning whatevers on the sides. They're 3-inch AoE lightning guns. Those also have suppressed, I think, on them. So this has multiple status effect options. If you wanted to, and I may do this, we'll see if I can get the magnetization to work. You could give all these guys for 30 points, you could give them all 200 killers, which I think is probably a good choice. I just don't like the idea of putting hunter killers on the Krios because I don't know where they're going to fit. But you could definitely do hunter killers on these, and it would be great. That would be 6 strength 9 armor piercing. This is AP2, but they are armor bane shots. So worth considering doing that if you've got the bits. I also lost the tip for one of my hunter killers, so that stinks. If I can find that, maybe I'll make this happen. Heavy assault slot, we're going to put in our 6 Ursarax, 4 with claws, 2 with fists. We'll talk about this at the end, but I would run 6 claws. If you're building Ursarax now, build 6 claws. That's the better build to have. And they are I don't know why I have them listed as because I have a prime in the unit. They're not a prime slot. I'm putting a prime in the unit. I'm tired of them failing leadership tests. So we're gonna try and fix that as best we can. But yeah, so that's our allied detachment there. And this is just, and it's worth noting that the tanks also can benefit from overcharge reactors. So we're getting a little bit of that synergy here where we can add in some extra things. Our second allied detachment, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. This is a Magos that is an Archimendrate Magos and a Prime slot. So this guy has Cortex Controller, Cyber Familiar, Overcharge Reactors, Power Axe, Iride Cleanser, which is another panic template weapon, but more importantly has Phage Toughness, so can reduce the toughness of a unit permanently if they take a wound from it. And then we'll also have combat veterans. And this is really cool. So Archimandrite adds to your leadership and cool, I think, and combat veterans adds to your leadership and cool and intelligence and willpower. And so what you can do with this guy is, because the Archimandrite rule is that I can add this model to a unit of a different faction, different Mechanicum faction, and I still am going to get Comptroller, and I'm not going to take the debuff for mixing factions. So usually if you put like a Blood Angel character in a Imperial Fist unit, that unit suffers -1 to their leadership, cool, willpower, and int. I think it's everything. It's at least the first two. If I have the Archimandrite ability, though, I don't suffer that penalty ever. And if I join a different Mechanicum faction, I still keep my Comptroller. Now, then the question becomes, Eric, you can't score with your Automata, though, because this guy's not Cybernetica. No, I can't, but I have Copper Top. And for 30 points, I know he's 45 because he's got the servo arm, but for 30 points, I can just toss Copper Top into this unit as a Cybernetica Tech Priest. And now I do score those objectives. And in addition, Copper Top is going to give this Magos +1 to their Cybertheurgy abilities, which is even cooler because now I'm going to get Cybertheurgy off even more often. And in addition, if I want to be a little bit gamey about it, if I'm worried about getting vanguarded off of an objective with shooting, I can just walk Copper Top away from the unit, and now they don't score anymore. So I can just turn off my own scoring whenever I need to, which is also kind of handy. So just be aware that this is a thing we can do. I've never thought about it before, but because we can mix our units and we can mix our different higher arcanas, I think they're high arcanas, high tech arcanas, we can maximize all of our abilities with these things. In addition, in this detachment, because he unlocks 2 slots, I'm going to put my Taghmata cohort with a Thalix cohort. I'm going to put a Prime in there, 4 multi-meltas, 5 lightning guns. Again, this is what I have. If I had to do this perfectly, I'd probably just make it 6 multi-meltas at that point. And drop them in from Deep Strike on vehicles and just annihilate them. As it stands with this unit, I'll probably just fly them around the board and shoot things. This is not the optimum build. I think that the better build is either to do lightning cannons and dark fire cannons? It's the dark fire cannon equivalent. And then maybe some so lightning guns, the dark fire cannon equivalent, maybe some phase plasma fusils in there, go marine hunting, or do all multi-meltas and go vehicle hunting. So this is not an optimal build, but it is what I have, and it's a decent unit. It's 9 guys that are going to jump around and shoot things and cause trouble. And then another thing that I'm kind of proud of, because I have an extra slot, I'm going to toss in an apprentice cadre. Why? Because this gives me another prime slot for a tech priest. And this is going to be an Archimandrite tech priest. And this guy is going to get Cortex controller, cyber familiar, servo arm, overcharge reactors. I have a power fist in here because the model has a power fist, but I don't need it. A Volkite Serpenta, and then combat veterans. What can this guy do? What can he do? He could attach to a unit like the Thalix and just give them additional leadership so they're less likely to run. Because he's an Archimandrite, they still get their comptroller ability from him. Or he could join a unit of uh, uh, of Automata and buff them. You go with the unit of Ursarox. So he's going to slow them down, but he's also going to buff their leadership a lot. I can put him anywhere. And I don't necessarily need him to have a Cortex controller, except I was planning on putting him with a unit of uh, 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 Automata, but we could drop that Cortex controller pretty easily and just put him in any unit and put him anywhere. And with Archimandrite and the combat veterans, again, you're going to kind of double dip on those buffs. So let's talk about what that looks like. So this is our base Magos at the top. And we can see sort of the differences in these guys. So if my Myrmidon Magos with Paragon of Battle and a Cyber Familiar works out to be weapon skill 5, ballistic skill 6. That means they're crit hitting all the time. They're 5 wounds, which is pretty considerable for a Magos model. 4 attacks, which is great for Mechanicum. We don't normally get that. And then effectively int 11, which means that we are doing well, we'll look at it in a minute, but int 11 means that we're doing Fury of Ages like 80% of the time. It's pretty impressive. Our Magos with combat veterans and just a cyber familiar, so this is our worst guy, is going to be leadership 9, cool 10, willpower 9. This is the guy who is the Lacrimosa guy, and int 12, which is pretty handy because again, this means that we're going to be doing like 90% of the time we'll be succeeding on our not overcharge reactors, deactivate limiters ability on him. And then the Archimandrite guy with our combat veterans and cyber familiar goes to leadership 10, cool 10. Keep in mind, this guy is going to be leading our automata, so we definitely don't want them failing leadership or cool things and getting status effects. Willpower 9, and then int 12. But they're going to be followed around by Copper Top, which is going to effectively give them int 13 on their cyberthergic power abilities, which means that like 93% of the time, we are succeeding in our cyberthergy. That is pretty cool. I really like this way to sort of layer buffs so that we can. It is definitely the long way around. I asked in our local chat or Discord. About, can Space Marines do this? And they're like, yeah, Space Marines do this without any buffs. So, it's always more difficult for Mechanicum, but it is kind of fun to be able to layer it in. And if we look at our tech priests in this, we can see that our basic tech priest stat line is 888 the whole way across. If we have combat veterans and cyber familiar, we go to all 9s and an 11 on int, which is pretty good. And that Archimandrite guy gets up to 10 leadership and cool and int 11. And with just cyber familiar and that stuff, if we didn't give them any weapons, that would be a 50-point model that's giving us leadership 10, cool 10, I guess 55 if we want to give them a cyberthergic power. So for 55 points, you could put a unit or model in your unit that is going to give them leadership 10, cool 10 on a unit of automata or something. Or don't do automata. Put them in a unit of tech thralls, or put them in a unit of like Thalax or something to just buff up that unit and make them a lot more possible to resist those leadership tests and status effects. I think this is great. I think this is probably the way to play Mechanicum if you're running soup. I don't think it's some secret sauce that's going to win you all your games, but it is definitely a new way to sort of, at least for me, a new way to think about this. And just a reminder that this is the way the math breaks down on this stuff. So again, if we play with this math, let's have our base let's have our base Magos, for example, cast or invoke overcharge reactors. So base Magos is leadership, int 9. Overcharge reactors is 2, so that's going to go down 58% of the time. So 58% of the time, we're going to get overcharge reactors off on our naked Magos. However, the Archimandrite Magos in with the cyber familiar and combat veterans and in a unit with copper top, they're going to be casting that power 97% of the time, right? And so that's what, like a 40% increase, right? So if we want to figure out the change, that's almost an 80% increase overall, 97 divided by 58, just doing the math in my head. It's just a massive improvement for just a few buffs. And I was trying to figure out the maths on like how many times I would actually fail over the course of a game with 4 turns, but it's really hard to guess that because I don't think I'll be using overcharge reactors necessarily every single turn. People are going to die, units are going to die. But it's only a handful of times in a game that you would actually fail, and you would basically be buffing your entire army, which is pretty cool. Definitely recommend sort of playing with these numbers and seeing where the balances are for you and your list. The last thing we'll talk about before I let you guys go is the changes for what I would do if I had anything to do with this list. So I would either add to the Castle X Destroyer unit or I'd get rid of them altogether. I don't think that 2 is a good number to be running. I think that I would either run 4 or 0. And it might be worth it to replace them with a Voltrax Stratos, which is coming out hopefully relatively soon, maybe in the next couple months. Or ideally with Vorax. I don't have Vorax models, but if I had Vorax models, that's what I would put in there. They're just much better. And I think it'd be fun to have sort of a choppy Archmagos model with a unit of Vorax kind of running around and killing things. I have another version of this list that swaps the Thalax for 2 times 20 Tech Thrall Covenants. And then we just put those into the Taghmata detachment and move the Macrotech stuff over the Archimandrite detachment. That's also worth trying probably, especially with that Archimandrite Tech Priest that's going to be leadership 10. Probably worth playing with that in that detachment. I just don't have 40 Tech Thralls painted yet. They are on the list, and I have the models and they're assembled, but it's going to be a little while before they get painted. As I mentioned, adding hunter killers to all the tanks is only 30 points. It's 5 points per hunter killer. It's definitely worth it. If you don't mind magnetizing them or gluing them. I guess you could glue them. I just don't know that the hunter killers are going to stick around on the Krios forever. So I would be really careful about that. And last but not least, we mentioned this earlier, but I would definitely add Ursarex Claws to the Ursarex. That's just the better way to run them. It's really not an argument. Even against Terminators, they're better with the claws. So I would definitely consider doing that. But yeah, that's all my sort of thoughts on this list. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. Did you already think about this? Are you a step ahead of me? And if I'm missing other things about Mechanicum list building, let me know. And help me be a better player in sort of figuring this out, because it is really complicated. It is. We've talked about this before. We sort of got the half-baked, not quite finished, very obtusely worded a Liber. And so there's sort of a lot of weird things that I'm still sort of figuring out in terms of how to build these. But thanks for hanging out and listening to this, and I will see you in our next video.